Welcome, welcome everyone, and a beautiful day to you. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, no matter what part of the world you are in. It is good to see you. And this is Sunday Sounds of Dhamma. So we'll do our usual program, which means about 10 or 15 minutes of guided meditation, and then I'll give a Dhamma talk. There will be a bit of time at the end for questions or reflections. And then today we actually are also having a brunch right after the talk for folks who are here. And hola Claudia. Te pongo como intérprete. ¿Estás segura?
100%, sí,
Okay.
perdón. Sí.
No, tranquilo. Siento que se me olvidó la fecha.
Pensé ayer en la noche en recordarte, pero a mí también se me olvidó, así que no te preocupes.
Ok. Hay interpretación simultánea en español para los que desean eso. Yeah, you can transcribe the call. The meeting. I always say good luck with that because, we use lots of words in Pali and in other languages that may or may not get transcribed correctly, but hopefully it helps. I'm happy to support anything that helps understanding. So also before I start with the meditation, I just want to say, in addition to brunch today, there is a hybrid retreat happening. So excuse me, both online and in person in Atlanta, Georgia. A retreat on the addressing greed, hatred, and delusion with a specific focus on wisdom, the factors for the arising of wisdom, and how that can be a way of responding to what we see in our lives. And what else is happening? You'll have to check the website and see. There's another brunch. There's a brunch every month and various events happening. Beautiful. So with that, I will go ahead and begin with the meditation. And this morning I thought I would suggest a mettā meditation, a meditation on loving kindness. And there are many different ways to practice loving kindness meditation, but the way I'm going to suggest is using some phrases. And the most important part about loving kindness practice is not a kind of Pollyanna idea that because I wish it, the world becomes so, but rather that we are establishing our own intentions. And by setting a wholesome and a positive intention, then our hearts and minds are changed and we become that positive presence that changes the world. So only repeat the phrases in your mind if it does align with your intention. And in between the phrases, you might just relax into your breath and feel the breath in the body anchoring the mind. So, as ever, I like to begin with a bit of movement, rocking the body from side to side. Excuse me. And from front to back. Releasing any tension that can be let go of in this moment. And allowing the body to come into a balanced and upright position. Really letting those bones carry the weight of the body. And letting the muscles soften and widen. Softening the eyes. And relaxing the mouth. And perhaps you can start to feel the sensations of the breath breathing the body. And it's okay just to let the breath have its natural rhythms. Now I'm going to suggest some phrases of loving kindness. And you can repeat them in your mind if they align with your wholesome intentions. May I be well. May I have a deep sense of well-being. And now resting again with the breath. Now expanding that intention. May all the beings on my street be well. All the humans, all the animals, insects, perhaps beings I don't know or can't see. May all the beings on my street be well. May all beings in my region, my state, may they be well. All beings in this region, may we all have a profound sense of well-being. And opening up a bit further, may all beings on the planet be well. May all beings on this planet have well-being. Beautiful. That brings us to the end of the meditation for now. And so as usual, I would like to begin the talk by chanting the homage and the refuge. And as you can see, hopefully you can see that on your screens. This is in the ancient Indic language of Pali. If that's unfamiliar, it's really okay just to let it wash over you. That it's basically saying we honor the Buddha as the awakened one, and honor not only the Buddha as a historical person, but the quality of awakening, the teachings that point to the truths of our lives, and the Sangha, the community of folks who are practicing in one way or another. So we can all chant together if you like. If folks online, keep your mics muted. So there's one person there. Yeah, there you go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Since ancient times, and certainly today, there has been a debate among Buddhists about the role that Buddhists can have in society, about whether or not to say something about what's happening in the world. Some folks would say you should prioritize your own peace, that nothing is more important than your personal peace. I see this on Instagram quite frequently. And as I have many times commented here, Instagram and all sorts of ways in which we might be receiving messages about how to live our lives. And we should be thoughtful about those messages and what we really think about those things. Because certainly there is a grain of truth to the idea that our peace is important. That indeed the promise of Buddhist practice is absolute peace, an unshakable peace. And that might sound very idealistic, but it is most definitely possible. But if we understand ourselves to be somehow standing apart from the world that we live in, even if you go to practice somewhere in a cave on a mountainside, that is a mistaken view. That is not actually how things work. And so, since ancient times, the teaching has been one of speaking up about what we see in the world. And being a voice of compassion and wisdom to the best of our ability. And sometimes I think that gets very tangled up for folks. Sometimes the question that I hear is, well, what about if they don't deserve our compassion? Or they don't want to listen to our wisdom? What about that? And it's a funny kind of question, because I think to myself, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is to say, oh, no, I'm not going to have compassion in my heart. I'm not going to behave in a way that is wise. I'm not going to cultivate my spiritual life because those people are misbehaving. That's a funny view, right? You wouldn't really say that to yourself. You wouldn't really put it to yourself in that way. So since the beginning, since ancient times, the teaching has also been that it's not about who deserves it, actually. That it's worthwhile for us to do the work of learning how to have our hearts be as wide as all beings. There's a beautiful quote, oh gosh, now I'm not remembering which monk it was, that said, a Chinese monk a very long time ago said, may my robes be so vast that they will shelter all beings. That's a beautiful intention. A beautiful, beautiful intention. And indeed, I would go so far as to say that to be the voice that prevents someone from doing harm is a compassionate voice. One of the most compassionate things we can do is help people to see how they harm themselves by harming others. That kind of work is amazing, is so beautiful. And is a kindness that comes out of wisdom. And it may sound very difficult. It may be very difficult for people to hear. It may be that it takes a while. It may be that we have to really learn some patience in order to go there. But that is a kindness. That is a kindness. And it calls to me this question of worthiness or boundaries or limits, or how we relate to others that we want to help, or that maybe we don't want to help, but we want them to be more well and cause less harm, perhaps. It recalls this very, very interesting teaching by the Buddha that appears in the Book of Eights of the Sutta Nipada. It's one of the lesser discourses, collections of discourses, so-called minor discourses. But it also appears in the Samyutta Nikaya and the Connected Discourses. And the Buddha's talking to a young boy named Sona. And he says to Sona, if someone, a spiritual person, sees themselves as better than another, as less than another, or as equal to another, then what could that possibly be but a mistaken view? A person who doesn't understand the nature of reality. So listen to that for a second. Not better, not worse, not equal. So what does that leave you? What does that leave you? So what the Buddha is pointing at there is the incomparable nature of a human being. You cannot compare yourself. When you truly understand what a human being is, you don't compare, because you know that it is ineffable. What's going on here? He gives us this very interesting pointer in the next line. He gives this pointer and he starts asking Sona about impermanence. He says, oh, is a person impermanent or not? Is this body impermanent? Is this mind impermanent? That's his pointer. Right? Indeed, it is impermanent. It is changing. It is so thoroughly impermanent that you couldn't really put your finger on it. In any given moment, it is a completely different state. Indeed, as my master, my root teacher, Sekkei Harada Roshi, used to say, it's not that there's one thing that is changing over time. That's usually how we want to understand impermanence, that there is this one body or this one mind or this one world which is changing over time. He says, no. It's that there is a different world arising. Arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. Related, of course. That's also important, that there is a thread of relationship from the past to the present, and from the present to the future. But this idea of this self as so thoroughly impermanent that it cannot be compared, it cannot even be well defined, it cannot be a solid thing, is important if we are going to hold open the possibility of others as folks who are just as changing. Just as impermanent. Perhaps the most extreme example of this is Angulimala. Angulimala, his name means finger, like a finger, and mala is like a necklace or a set of beads. I didn't bring my mala here to show you, but you guys know what I'm talking about here. These little strings of beads that we sometimes wear around our neck or around our wrists. He was a serial killer. He was somebody who had made a pact to kill a large number of people. Somebody said to me 1,000 the other day. I thought it was 100. In any event, it's a lot of people. And the Buddha happened to be passing through the region of the part of the forest where he was doing this. And the townspeople said, don't go in that part of the forest because that guy will kill you. And the Buddha said, oh, good, let's go in that part of the forest. Make note of that. So the Buddha goes to that part of the forest, and sure enough, Angulimala starts to chase him, to kill him, with the intention of killing him. But he can't catch the Buddha for whatever reason. And he calls out to the Buddha, stop, stop. Right? And the Buddha stops and he turns and he looks at Angulimala and he says, I have stopped, but have you? You must stop too. So he tells him very clearly, he does this very compassionate thing to say, you have to stop this harmful thing that you're doing with your life. And fortunately, Angulimala listens, and he takes up the practice, and he gets very advanced at the practice. He becomes a monk, and that's not being very advanced necessarily, becoming a monk, but he is said to have practiced quite well. And it's a beautiful, beautiful example of the extreme optimism of Buddhism. When I was a chaplain in the hospital, I was doing my hospital training as a chaplain many years ago, and I was assigned to the ICU for the first 6 months of my year-long training in the hospital. And the good thing about that was that it meant that the chaplain, I as the chaplain, was included in what we call rounds, where the doctors and the nurses and the therapists and the respiratory folks and the pharmacists and everybody gets together every day and has a meeting to talk about each one of the patients and how they're doing and how they want to coordinate their care. And I was part of those meetings. Usually just listening and trying to really understand a little bit about what was going on medically for those people. But every once in a while they would ask me a question or they would ask me to talk to someone. And this one gentleman came in who had been in many times in the ICU. And the doctor turned to me and he said, oh, you should go talk to him because you never give up on anybody. And I thought, wow, I hope that's really true. I hope that's really true. Because that is the teaching of the Dhamma. That we don't give up on anybody, ourselves or anyone else. And this has to do profoundly, quite subtly in some cases, with the understanding of karma. Karma in Sanskrit or kamma in Pali. So later in Angulimala's story, we hear that he goes into town with his bowl and his robes to collect his meal, just as the monastics always did, just as I have done, as even contemporary day, but today's day, monastics do. And they started throwing rocks at him. And they broke his bowl, and it gave him a cut in his head. And so he walks back, and he goes to the Buddha and he says, "Look what happened to me while I was at an alms round." And this, could be kind of shocking. Generally speaking, the monastics were treated with a degree of respect, even by the folks who weren't of the same spiritual belief. They mostly left them to their own. They wouldn't bother them. But the Buddha, instead of saying, "Oh, those bad people, excuse me, those bad people, they shouldn't be doing that thing." No, that's not what the Buddha said. The Buddha said to Angulimala, he said, you have to tolerate that, because actually that is the result. That is the harmful result of those harmful actions that you did. And it could have been much worse. You could have been lifetimes in hell instead. But now, because you've turned the corner and you are doing wholesome things with your life, and you have done these other practices for the benefit of other beings, now you receive the result in this way, which is actually relatively minor considering what should have happened to you if you had continued. So there's this very interesting teaching which is hard sometimes for us to wrap our minds around, which is when karma is, according to Buddhism, set in motion by intentional actions, intentional speech, intentional thought. The intention is an important part of it, and is actually not a karmic act if it's not intentional. But if it is intentional, then anything done with intention is setting in motion some kind of karmic result, what we call a vipaka in Pali. But the interesting thing is that result, it comes forth in the future, and the way that it comes forth in the future can shift based on what's happened between the time that we did the thing and the time when the result is arising. So if we've turned the corner, so to speak, if we have gone over from the dark side to the light, then that result comes up, it arises in the context of a more wholesome karmic stream, a more wholesome karmic constellation. I like to call it the karmic constellation. This body and mind is your karmic constellation. And so the thing, or for example, if you did a bad thing and you express remorse, which I think Angulimala probably also did, that is said to mitigate those future karmic resultants. So it's a very complex phenomena, the way that karma is set into motion and the way that events and results arise. But the basis of that teaching is that at any moment we can choose to put good results into the stream, into our own stream, or not. Again, it's a very optimistic view, but it puts a lot of responsibility on us as well. It puts a lot of responsibility because it means that you're making the choice, actually. There's not some other being out there that's going to judge you. You are making the choice about what kinds of results you're putting into your future. So I'll close with a little bit of a poem from Angulimala, who sits down to contemplate this teaching that the Buddha gave him and writes out this poem. And but before that, before I close with the poem, I just want to again say that it's a compassionate thing for us to do, to call out harm when we see it in the world, or to be putting up a boundary to prevent someone else from causing harm, if we can do that, or to be the voice of compassion in some other way. I went out yesterday to the protests, not because I want to represent a particular side or the other, but because to be silent in the face of harm is not my practice. That's not my practice. That's not wisdom. That's not compassion. So we'll close with Angulimala's quote. Let's see now. So this was the one about the not equal. So I bring all the big books. Y'all can look it up if you like. I'm always happy to give their references. I know for all the Dharma geeks, some people laugh at that. I know. Some people don't want to. Also, that's also fine. So here it says, so this is from Majjhima Nikaya, number 86. That's the story about Angulimala's life, the Middle Length Discourse, number 86. It says, so while Venerable Angulimala was alone in retreat, experiencing the bliss of liberation, he uttered this exclamation. So he recited this poem, right? Because things weren't written down back then. He recited this poem. It's quite a long poem, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read you the beginning part here. One who previously lived in negligence is the way that Bhikkhu Buddha is translating this. Or I could say, one who previously lived sort of ignoring ethics, and then is negligent no more. So one who then takes up some kind of more, you could say more diligent way about that, or more thoughtful way in their life, more wholesome choices. They illuminate this world like the moon freed from the cloud. So one who lived in negligence, or one who lived ignoring the wholesome life and then becomes wholesome, they are like the moon freed from the cloud. What a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, huh? And again, he says, one who checks the evil deeds, who stops evil deeds by doing wholesome deeds instead, illuminates this world like the moon freed from a cloud. So he goes on. And finally, he gives this beautiful aspiration for his so-called enemies. He says, let my enemies give ear from time to time and hear the Dhamma of those who preach forbearance, those who preach patience, and of those who speak well in praise of kindness, and let them follow up with kind deeds. So he wishes even his enemies will experience kindness in their hearts. So may you all be like the moon freed from the clouds of delusion. Be the bright compassion. Speak up. Stand up. Well, hi, Nino showed up for the question and answer now. Great. And so if folks want to ask a question, give any kind of reflection or concern. This would be the time. Yes, Brad, please.
Was this, I'm not sure I get my own feed.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. Let me just correct that. Okay, now you should be able to do it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's better. So I'm not sure of the link to the Chinese master, but I recall years ago reading a poem by Ryokan that went, "If only the sleeves of this old monk's robe were wide enough to gather up all suffering beings in this Saha world."
Wonderful. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a Ryokan reference. Lovely. Thank you, Brad. And somebody also put something in the chat there, also referencing Ryokan Joso. When I think about the misery of those in this world, their sadness becomes mine. Oh, that my monk's robe were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in the floating world, just as Brad said. Nothing makes me more happy than Amida Buddha's vow to save everyone. Wow, so he's mixing all of the stuff up there in terms of various Buddhist concepts. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Ryokan, a beloved poet from the 1800s in Japan, who was a monk, a hermit, rascal. What else? He was known for being very playful. He would carry a little ball in his sleeves, tucked away in his sleeves of his robe, so that when he went into town, he could play ball with the kids. Yeah. Any other questions or reflections? Yes, Dana. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you. Yesterday, we too went out in Atlanta to our local King's March, and I was so moved by the children, that parents had felt it was safe enough and that children were included. And I was thinking, I don't observe, strangers coming out together and bringing their kids often. And it's a shame that it's for such a difficult time, but it was really beautiful to see the families.
Yeah, very sweet. Thank you for sharing that, Dana. We also had kids at our rally, and
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Well, I think on that note, we are going to call it a day. So, Dana, do you also want to make the announcement while you're there?
Yes, thank you. The practice of giving and receiving has been a part of Buddhism since its inception. Giving to the Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports our guiding teacher, Dhammadīpā, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. There are several ways to give financially on the donate page. You can volunteer and see those opportunities on the website as well. And if you haven't yet, I think that seeing all wonderful familiar faces, do subscribe to the newsletter, but that is there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And that reminds me to say that for folks here in the room, there are a few hard copies left of a book that I wrote a few years back called Gifts Greater Than the Oceans, which is not a thank you for giving, and it's not an enticement for giving. It's actually about why giving is wisdom, why giving leads to non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And there's also, for folks who are online, PDF copies in English and in Spanish on the website, on the Dassanaya.org website under articles and books. So under teachings, that's where you can find it on the menu. So that's freely offered. Everybody's welcome to it. And the and lovely Dana did the beautiful publication design for that publication. So beautiful. So dedicating the merits of our practice today, that all beings might find compassion in their hearts, that all beings might know themselves as Dhammas, themselves as expressions of wisdom, and that all beings might be freed from mental and physical suffering by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts. May all beings be liberated. Good to see you all. Take good care. Gracias, Claudia.
Thank you. Beautiful, timely Dhamma talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye.